Oh, man, what a game this weekend's going to be. We've already had Eric Kane to talk Tennessee, which I know you were on his show. You were just telling me you've had so many interviews lined up for this. I saw you guys at Sooner Scoop had Paul Feinbaum. I mean, it's a big week when you got Paul Feinbaum on your show talking it. But we got George Stoia from Sooner Scoop. Thank you so much for taking the time, George.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. This is obviously a huge week here in Norman. We've been talking about it here in the office and just with other folks around town. I mean, this is probably the biggest game at Oklahoma in maybe 12 years. I know Ohio State came to town back in 2016, but that year Oklahoma had already lost a game and didn't play well in that game. And you just talk about the storylines, and I'm sure we'll get into it, the Josh Heupel stuff, but also OU's first SEC game. I feel like they feel like they have a lot to prove come Saturday.
And so much is made about Josh Heupel, his return, getting fired. Has anyone asked you? This probably happened when he got hired, but I would assume no one's asked you this week. Didn't Brent Venables get fired by Bob Stoops too? Why is that not a talking point this week?
Yeah, I think that one was a little bit different. I'm not so sure. Josh was fired and they moved on. Brent kind of made his own decision to leave. Now, was that ultimately a decision that Oklahoma felt like it needed to happen? I'm not so sure. It's funny that those questions have come up. And for me, it's funny to look back on because I was in high school when all this was going down. So I was out of the loop on a lot of this stuff. But, it is interesting, both those guys obviously spending a large amount of their careers at Oklahoma, whether it was obviously as a player for Josh, but when he came back, as a GA and quarterbacks coach, and you look at the players that he coached, Jason White, Sam Bradford, they had a bunch of really talented players. Trevor Knight in that the Alabama game in the Sugar Bowl. Josh Heupel was the offensive coordinator in that game. One of the best bowl performances we've seen from an Oklahoma quarterback and an Oklahoma team. So it's really interesting the back and forth, and I think there is a lot of respect there. I know there's some riff maybe still between Bob Stoops and Josh Heupel, but I know from Oklahoma's side of things, inside that athletic department, inside those coaching offices, there's a lot of respect for Josh Heupel. There's his face is still on a lot of the walls inside this building and inside the Barry Switzer Center, and a guy that was the last quarterback to win a national title at Oklahoma. I'm sure that they're going to have a tribute for him at some point during the game Saturday, and there's going to be a lot of people that are happy to see him, and I'm sure he'll get a standing ovation at the game.
Yeah. Well, College Game Day is going to be there. It's going to be insane. I've been listening to you guys all week. Sooner Scoop, I know you got buddies coming in, some that may not even get into the game because it's going to be so difficult to get into. But I asked this, George, not to be disrespectful to Oklahoma. I come simply from a place of ignorance because we're still learning about Oklahoma. My first visit came in July when they officially joined the SEC. I'll be there this weekend to take in the atmosphere. But here's the question. Does Oklahoma have an elite home field advantage? How would you answer that?
They do when they want to. That's what I would say. I think that, like I said, they haven't had a game this big at home in some time. I think 2017 TCU, I think that was a top 10 matchup. Obviously, the year that Oklahoma went on to play in the Rose Bowl in the college football playoff. That was a great atmosphere, but it's TCU, right? It's not a blue blood college football program coming in. Ohio State, I remember I was a student at that game, and there was a lot of buildup to that game, and a lot of Oklahoma fans that didn't think they had a chance, and they ended up not having a chance. And so I think that the atmosphere died quickly in that game because it got a little out of hand pretty quick. But I think back to the 2012 Notre Dame game. That was a great atmosphere, and Oklahoma hung around in that game for a long time. The 2008 Texas Tech game is infamous here in terms of the jump around, and that was a blowout in Oklahoma's favor. So there have been times that this crowd has showed up, and I'm really interested, Mike, to see what the atmosphere is like, because the narrative around here in Oklahoma has been, is Oklahoma SEC ready? And I don't think that means just on the field. That means in the stands. There's been a lot made about the Oklahoma fan base in recent years. When Lincoln Riley left, a lot of people said it reignited the fan base. You've seen really good crowds, but there just hasn't been a ton of opponents that have come into town that have gotten this crowd fired up. They've played a lot of 11 a.m. kickoffs the last couple years under Brent Venables. It's just not the same when Iowa State comes to town versus a top 10 Tennessee team. So I expect this atmosphere to be rowdy, to be raucous. It's going to be, I think, one of the best we've seen at Oklahoma in some time. Now the question is, can the team keep them engaged in the game? Because I think if this game is close, this crowd is going to be awesome. If it gets out of hand early, then I'm sure you could see, like any college football team, fans maybe hitting the exits early.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if this clip has made the rounds down in Norman, but in training camp, Nico said, "Hey, I prefer road games," and because I think that's going to be key to the game. If they can rattle Nico, and he's never played in an environment like this, if they can rattle him, I think that is one of the very critical aspects for Oklahoma. Have you seen that? And will this crowd rattle Nico?
I think they will early in the game, but I also think Nico is a really poised kid. You watch him play, and it doesn't seem like anything phases him. And I know he hasn't played, really a true road game like this before. But I think Nico is somebody that's ultra talented and can probably handle it. But you're right. For Oklahoma, they have to rattle him. And whether that's the crowd noise and the helmet communication, I know Josh Heupel talked about the helmet communication on the SEC teleconference yesterday, just saying that they have to make sure that they're on the same page in terms of communicating. Obviously, they're going tempo, going speed. I wonder if that might help Tennessee in this game, kind of quiet that crowd. But then what is Brent Venables going to throw at Nico, right? We haven't seen a ton from this Oklahoma defense in terms of different schemes and different blitzes and the exotic blitzes that you're known for seeing with a Brent Venables defense. I think he's going to throw the kitchen sink at Nico, say, hey, beat us with your arm, make the right decisions, go through your progressions, and let's see if Oklahoma can make a play. Because if OU wants to win this football game or be in this football game, they're going to have to make Nico make some bad decisions. They're going to have to force him into, throwing maybe an interception or sitting in the pocket too long and getting a strip sack. Like, that's Oklahoma's path to victory in this, is making Nico uncomfortable and creating some of those game-changing turnovers.
Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you, that clip is going to live in infamy if Oklahoma wins on Saturday night. Is it fair to say that Oklahoma can really only go on offense as far as Jackson Arnold can take them? Because I don't know. Just looking at this team, now I know the receivers, we may be getting some back, but the receivers have not, outside of Deion Burks, he's amazing, but outside of him, there's no running game. The offensive line is a major issue. Is the offense basically going as far as Jackson Arnold can take them?
I think it's going as far as the offensive line will take him. And you want to see from Jackson in this game, be somebody that you walk out feeling good about the rest of the year. I said that on our podcast. I said, other than a victory, the biggest thing you want out of this is going, man, Jackson Arnold, he's a gamer, right? He stepped up to the challenge, played well behind an offensive line that's really been struggling. But if Oklahoma wants to find a way to win, not only do they need to create those turnovers on defense, they have got to figure out something on offense in terms of the offensive line, whether that's running the football, screen game, getting the ball out quick out of Arnold's hands, the quarterback run game. That's something that we saw a week ago against Tulane. I'm sure we'll see a lot of it on Saturday against Tennessee. But for me, it's can this offensive line hold up? And they're expecting to get a couple guys back. Troy Everett, who was the presumed starter at center back in the spring, he blew his knee out. It sounds like he's going to be back this week. We'll see if he's playing center or guard. Branson Hickman, the transfer from SMU at center, he goes down in the first game. It sounds like he might be able to play. Jake Taylor at right tackle, he's listed as questionable. So if they can get a couple of those guys back on the offensive line, I'm not saying all of a sudden Oklahoma is going to be a juggernaut offensively, but maybe they're able to move the ball. You mentioned getting some receivers back. Nick Anderson's the big one. He's going to play on Saturday, scored 10 touchdowns a year ago. Maybe that opens up some stuff for a guy like Deion Burks, who's been getting a lot of double teams so far. So, yes, Jackson Arnold has to play great. He's got to be a gamer in this one, right? He's got to make some big-time throws down the field. He's got to use his legs and scramble, get out of the pocket, do all of those things that we've seen great Oklahoma quarterbacks do. But I also just think the offensive line really needs to do their part in this game and hold up best they can.
Mm-hmm. And then I know it's early. We've only seen a couple of games from Jackson Arnold, but I don't think it's really even debatable. The last 10 or so years, Oklahoma's had the best run of quarterbacks in college football. What does he? I'm not asking you to sit here and say he's as good as those guys, but have you seen stuff from him that says he could be that next line, like he could live up to that billing?
I think he definitely has the arm talent and also the athletic ability. I mean, again, like I said a week ago, rushed for 97 yards, looked way faster than I think any of us anticipated. Very dynamic, but there's glimpses, right? Certain throws he makes that you're like, okay, not everybody can do that. The big thing with Jackson, I think, is making the right reads, making the right mental decisions, whether it's, throwing guys open, which we haven't seen a ton of this year, but we saw some of that in the Alamo Bowl a year ago. I know he turned the ball over in that game, but he made some throws in that game that are just big time stuff. And so I think you've seen glimpses of it. It's what's he going to look like on a stage like this? There's been a lot of talk about Nico and playing on the road, but the pressure is on for Jackson Arnold too. Playing at home, the expectations of this game, how bad the offense has looked through 3 games, like he's got to play up to that level. And you've seen that, from prior Oklahoma quarterbacks, whether that's, Baker Mayfield on the road at Tennessee in one of his first career starts at Oklahoma. I mean, he was a gamer in that game, and he didn't play well to that fourth quarter, as you guys know, and in overtime, but he led that team to that comeback win. Like, can Jackson Arnold do that? I don't know. Like, we haven't seen maybe that same moxie as a Baker Mayfield or a Kyler Murray, who was an ultra competitor, Jalen Hurts, right? Some of those great quarterbacks that we've seen. I think he's got the talent to do that. It's, does he have the confidence? Is he comfortable? And can the guys around him help him reach that level this week?
Yeah, I was at that Tennessee-Oklahoma game. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, what's the biggest advantage in this matchup, you think, for Tennessee?
Oh, it's their defensive line. No question about it. I think that it's maybe the best in the country right now. And you look at where OU has struggled the most this year, it's up front offensively. And so I think that Tennessee is going to be able to get after Oklahoma up front. I know that they've been really good against the run. Oklahoma hasn't been able to run the football this year. I wonder if OU tries to mix it up, tries to get to the edges, because I just don't think they're going to be able to run it up the middle on Tennessee much at all. And then I wonder what the passing game looks like, because when Arnold has dropped back and has been, trying to, if they haven't been able to give him time, right, to let receivers develop down the field, get open. I don't think that if they can't do that against Temple, Houston, and Tulane, I don't know how they're going to do it against Tennessee. Like I said, they get a couple guys back, and maybe that helps them out, but I expect a lot of quick passing game from Oklahoma, getting the ball out of Arnold's hands before that Tennessee defensive line gets to him, because I think that is the biggest mismatch right now for Oklahoma.
How about the reverse? What matchup favors Oklahoma the most, do you think?
That's a good question. I think that Oklahoma's run defense is something, that front seven for Oklahoma. I think Tennessee's offensive line is a good group, but I expect Oklahoma to sell out on stopping the run, and I think that they're going to have some success doing that. I know Tennessee has run for a lot of yards this year, but I think the strength of this Oklahoma football team is up front. The defensive line has played extremely well this year, whether it's on the edges or on the interior. DJ Terry from Tennessee, as you guys know, coming off his best game. I expect him to have a big game on Saturday. They go out and they get Dominic Williams, maybe the best defensive tackle in the transfer portal last year from TCU. Jaden Jackson, the true freshman, Grayson Halton, who's in his third year. That's a really solid group on the interior. So I think that Oklahoma can maybe control the line of scrimmage in the run game. The bigger question for me is, can that defensive line get after Nico? If they stop the run, at least in some aspect, are they able to bring some different blitzes? Are they able to win some one-on-one matchups on the edges? Can a Danny Stutzman get free and make some plays, blitzing, Nico? So that, to me, I think for Oklahoma is the biggest advantage. Is I do think that they're going to have some success stopping the run, but can they stop the long ball? I know Nico's got a great arm, an ability to push the ball down the field. I know we haven't seen it a ton this year from Tennessee, but I do think that they're going to try and attack this Oklahoma secondary a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not putting this out till Friday. Have you? Can you give me a prediction for the game?
Yeah, I've got Tennessee winning this game. I know Oklahoma fans won't want to hear that. I know there's been a lot of national talk about this could be a blowout. Even here locally, I think some people think that Oklahoma's not going to be able to hang in there. I think Oklahoma is going to play it tight. I think this is going to be a close game. I think that Tennessee wins something like 34-27, something like that. I think that for Oklahoma to win this football game, they're going to have to score in the 30s, and I just don't trust this Oklahoma offense to score that many points. So I do think it'll be close. I think Oklahoma will have a chance in this game, maybe late, to maybe put together a drive to go down and tie the game up or something like that, but ultimately won't be able to do so.
Mm-hmm. All right, last thing for you, George. Let's say Oklahoma does win, because right now I think it's fair to say they're firmly out of the playoff picture, but still in it. But maybe like a bubble type team. I think with a win, they immediately elevate into the playoff. At least the projections. What will that do for Brent Venables and company? And if they can win a game of this caliber, do you think Oklahoma will make the 12-team playoff?
It'd be huge. I wouldn't go as far to say that they would make it, just because you look at their schedule and everybody's like, man, this is a big game against Tennessee. Well, they've still got obviously Texas, who's playing as well as anybody in the country, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, and those are not easy games.
Everybody but Georgia.
Yeah, exactly. South Carolina comes to town, and South Carolina looks a lot better than I think a lot of people anticipated. So I think a win would be massive, though, for just the narrative around Oklahoma, the narrative around Brent Venables. I've said it a couple times this week, but when Brent Venables was hired, he wanted to build a defense that could compete at the highest level in the SEC. And we're going to find out if that's for real, if he's been able to do that now in his third year at Oklahoma on Saturday. I don't think anybody anticipated it was going to be against maybe the best offense in the country right off the bat like this against Tennessee, but it's certainly going to be put to the test. So it would be a massive win for Brent Venables. But I also look at it like this, Mike. If Oklahoma were to lose on Saturday, I wouldn't put them out of the race yet either, because like I said, I know that schedule is really tough. But let's say they steal a couple of those wins, right? I've said from the beginning of the season, if they can just get to the bye week in a couple weeks before OU Texas at 4-1, they got to go to Auburn next week. They need to win one of these next 2 weeks to stay in the race, or at least get to a point where you feel like, okay, they can win 8-9 games this season. But I think the worst case scenario, Mike, is they get blown out on Saturday at home. I don't think the fan base would be too happy about that.
Yeah. All right, George, really appreciate your time. Before you go, can you tell my audience how to follow you and how to find your work?
Yeah, just go to Soonerscoop.com. That's the best place to find my work. I'm actually working on a really cool Josh Heupel story this week that'll drop Friday. So if you guys are listening to this on Friday or Saturday, you can go check that out, or you guys can follow us on Twitter at Sooner Scoop, or I guess X. Same with me, George Stoia, Stoia. You can find me on X as well.